Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats Podcast, brought to you by DraftKings, America's #1 sportsbook app. Now joined by the #1 sports beat writer for the 8th-ranked Arizona Wildcats, the great Bruce Pascoe. Bruce, that was just a fact. That was not a compliment right there.
I don't know. I would dispute that, but I'm just lucky to be doing it every day, basically.
Yep. All right, Bruce, so going into this season, I'll be honest with you, I thought that this Arizona team, I thought they'd take a step back. I looked at Ben Mathurin, I looked at Christian Coloco, Dalen Terry leaving, and I'm thinking, all right, you're replacing them with some guys, but I'm thinking these are more solid players than anything else. And Tommy Lloyd, lo and behold, has them at 22-4, and I know we're coming off a tough loss against Stanford, but still in contention for a #1 seed. What surprised you the most about this year's team, if anything?
Probably their versatility. How I think, even though I think to your point, their talent is a little bit down, and their depth is certainly down. They don't have as much depth that Tommy Lloyd can trust or wants to trust, but they can win games in different ways and have. And I think that UCLA game really stands out. I mean, winning a game in the 50s, who would have thought a Tommy Lloyd team would ever score in the 50s, much less win a game in the 50s? And then, and then winning games over 100 in the 90s. They can do it any number of ways. They're just and that maybe, for them, maybe that contrasts a little bit to last year where they got, kind of bogged down and in a couple of games. Colorado got them pretty good. There was a UCLA game at UCLA, and then certainly those last two tournament games, TCU and Houston, were really physical games that they struggled in. And this team's shown a little more versatility and maybe a little more toughness, just not that super, that super talent that those three guys brought.
Now, I thought Azuolas Tubelis going into the season, I'll be honest, I thought he'd be really good. I thought he would be probably 17 points, 8 rebounds, something like this. But Bruce, I'll be honest with you, I did not see him having kind of a Derek Williams type year, which is what he's had to this point. I mean, it's really been remarkable, just the improvement that he's shown on the court so far.
Yeah, I mean, he's just gotten more efficient and just so much more consistent every game, except for Stanford. We were talking about it after Stanford when he disappeared, although partly for a lot of reasons that weren't, all him, and that he got in foul trouble and he couldn't get the ball. So, but for the most part this year, he's been, he's a walking double every game, pretty much, it seems like anyway. And I think at Cal, it was 24, 13 or something. You don't even think about it. And just really consistent. I think he made the point in the preseason that the last games, he really didn't play well in either of those either, especially against Houston. I think those drove him really hard over the summer, and he talked about that, and he's lived up to that. And from what I heard after Stanford game, we weren't allowed to talk to him, but he really took that hard. And I think, I think he's going to come out and probably have a big week. Maybe even to finish the season on a high note after that. He's a quiet guy, but I think inside he's really got a motor.
All right, and playing Stanford, that was obviously a game that I did not see coming. I thought Arizona would probably win that game by 7 to 10 points or whatever. But that also shows you too that as good as this team is, they're also vulnerable. I always felt last year that last year's team could always just kind of outman you at certain points. I mean, you could be down 10, but you still had Mathurin, you still had Coloco on the back end. Against Stanford, you saw that the margin for error isn't quite what last year's team was, as good as this year's team is.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, but it's also not surprising. I mean, we all thought that they would be a little down this year. You can't lose 3 guys in the NBA draft and just pick it up, because even if you replace them with 3 5-star players as freshmen, it's not going to be the same, because freshmen almost never have, that kind of same impact. That those guys were guys who've been in the system, and frankly had all been under 2 coaches, Sean Miller and Tommy Lloyd, arguably making them even, better players, because 2 different styles, 2 different systems, emphasis, Miller drilling defense into him and this and that, and Lloyd tweaking the defense and running a different offense, and really good players and super talented. And I think you've seen that play out in the way not only Ben Mathurin might be, one of the best rookies, if not the best in the league, but Koloko, having probably a better rookie year than a lot of people thought.
All right, now let me tell you about something here. Time to pay a few bills here. The Four Peaks, the official brew of PHNX Sports. Bruce, have you heard my nickname for the 4 U of A big men?
Yes.
Do you think that's stupid? Be honest.
Well, the only thing is when you think of Four Peaks, you think of Phoenix, right?
Yeah, I know. That's the one. That's the one drawback.
It's a Tucson team, so
Right. But again, either way, the official brew of PHNX Sports, Four Peaks. Check it out. You can come to our tap and bottle locations, and you can get the Four Peaks for our watch parties right there, or you can go to Tempe, the inferior city of Tucson, and get it there as well. But either way, Four Peaks, great beer. Check out the show notes and the link in the description. And Mountain Mike's Pizza. Do you like pizza, Bruce?
Yes.
Who doesn't like pizza? All right.
Right.
Mountain Mike's Pizza, Oracle and Wetmore. Go check it out. Great TV setup, great food. You know what? Think about it this way. You're getting out for a lunch and you're like, man, what's Bruce Pascoe been writing? You get the Arizona Daily Star. You get you go to Mountain Mike's Pizza. You check it out. Good stuff right there. Great TV setup, drinks, food, you name it. Pizza's fantastic. Check it out. Show notes and the link in the description. All right. Bruce, going forward with this squad, what do you expect? Because to me, I watch this team and I think to myself, they could win they could lose in the second round, or they could go to the Final Four. And quite frankly, neither one would really surprise me. You in that boat? Are you thinking something different? What's up there?
Yeah, but it's college basketball. We could say that probably about 10 teams this year, at least,
right,
that are in that situation. There's probably some that are a solid bet to make that second weekend, but you're right. Arizona could struggle in the first or second round, particularly if they dip to like a third seed or even a fourth. Certainly, then you're looking at a really tough game in the second round. So yeah, it could happen, but also, they have ways, again, they're versatile. They, when they're clicking and both the inside and out are going, they're really hard to beat. And for that reason, you could see it going to the Final Four. You're right. It could be either way.
Right. Now, Umar Ballo, I thought last year, first of all, I was wrong on Umar Ballo. I thought that he would kind of just be a practice player, kind of a Eugene Edgerson type. You go in there, you throw some elbows around, things like that. Yeah. He's obviously skilled. I'm of the point though that when you have a Julius Tabellis and you have Umar Ballo, those are the two guys that every single game. And I know it's not necessarily fair, but I need to get almost 38 points and 20 rebounds out of you, because that's Arizona's one big advantage going into every single game. And honestly, I think that's a real testament to Tommy Lloyd's player development as well, that these guys are both in the position that somebody like me can realistically expect that from them.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Ballo showed signs, though, I think towards the end of last year where you could kind of see this coming, but he's probably even been arguably a little better than that, especially, as quick as he did it. I mean, getting that Maui tournament, he was just absurd. And that efficiency was just absurd in that tournament, and, what he did there. And I think, ever since then, they've been just alternating, and they're both, I think there's been 3 games when they both had a double-double at the same time. Right. And then when they don't have them at the same time, usually one of them does. They're just a constant. And yeah, that's what this team needs. And I think that's why, at Stanford, Courtney Ramey hit 8 threes. And he even said after the game, I don't really want to hit 8 threes. I'd rather get the ball to those guys because that's how we win games. I mean, that's basically what he said anyway. And there's some truth to that. But, ideally for Arizona, that happens when they get a little bit of both, or they get a little bit of shooting to complement those two guys inside.
Have you ever seen somebody, you've been covering basketball a long time, and that's not an old joke. I'm just saying you've been covering basketball a long time. Have you ever seen a player like Pelle Larsson that is clearly far better coming off the bench than he is in the starting lineup? And it's basically put him on the bench and he's going to be immediately better than he is in the starting lineup. You ever seen anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's been some really good second men. You think of even Jason Terry before, on that 97 team way back when. And a couple, I think, I think Andre Iguodala was the sixth man when he was a freshman. But
Hassan Adams.
Hassan Adams, a lot of those guys all became better starters. So, so they don't really qualify for what you're saying. But so I think in that case, arguably Larson is a little unique. And I think that's, a couple things there. He just, he's comfortable with it. He did it a lot last year, and became the sixth man of the year, and so he's confident in that role, and he brings energy off the bench. And I think Tommy Lloyd pointed out, or maybe it was Murphy, I can't remember, that his mentality is, I think starting really bothered him if he got that early foul or two, and he doesn't have to worry about that as much off the bench. So that's maybe a secondary factor as well. And it's unusual, absolutely, especially a guy who needs to shoot a little bit too, to come into a game cold and be able to produce. It's not easy, and he's been doing it on a really high level.
What do you mentioned that you think that Azuolas Tubelis might make up for his performance this past week? You looking for a big week out of the big man this coming week?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think he's got a real determination about him that you don't see necessarily by the way he speaks and even acts. He's just driven, and provided Arizona can get him the ball a reasonable amount of time. I mean, he can create his own, steal here or there and take it in. But, as long as they get him the ball on an average amount of time, I could see him posting 2 double-doubles this weekend, no question.
All right. Bruce Pascoe travels with the team, but let's say that you're saying to yourself, I'm not Bruce Pascoe and I want to still watch the game with other people. Tap and Bottle watch parties. Come check us out. We had a big showing last week. Would love to see you down there. Tap and Bottle, the go-to place for away game. While Bruce is behind the bench writing stuff up, you can come have a few beers with us, yell at the screen, and get ready for the post-game show. Tap and Bottle. Check out the show notes and the link in the description. And more furniture, morfurniture.com. They've redone the entire PHNX studios. Looks fantastic. I'd highly recommend. Good prices. We talked about Brody Dryden the other day. Brody Dryden, as Bruce knows, is about 6'8". I am not 6'8". But you know what? They have furniture for both of us out there. So check it out. Good stuff right there. More furniture, morfurniture.com. You're going to like my last read, Bruce, coming up. But I wanted to ask you now, you've covered a lot of personalities over the years. I mean, you covered, obviously, we talked about it a ton. You've covered Jerry Tarkanian. You've covered Rolly Massimino, Lute Olson, the great Kevin O'Neill, lots of different guys. Tommy Lloyd, I'm just going to say this right there. Tommy Lloyd likes Bruce Pascoe. You can just tell Tommy Lloyd likes Bruce Pascoe. My question is this. What are your just kind of opinions of covering him on a day in, day out basis? Because you're around the team. You're just around more than any other media member.
I think I spoke to his dad at UW a couple weeks ago when he was at the game, and he said, I always tell people what you see is what you get. And I think he's right. I mean, Tommy Lloyd's he carries himself like a regular guy. He's just easy to relate to. And I think, he's pretty straightforward about, his emotions. His players seem to bond with him like that. And, not that all coaches are phony or anything, but certainly a lot of them present differently to the media and their players than they really are. I think Lloyd is that way. The only thing you don't see sometimes is how super competitive he is.
Yeah.
And that came out a little bit after Stanford. He was a little testy in the press room.
Have you ever seen him that upset?
I would say that's right up there with any of them. I mean, honestly, even when he lost, remember that game, you might have been in the press room, Mike, when they lost to Washington State at home. Yeah. We were all sitting there waiting for him to come in. That was the first game he lost to McHale. We're all sitting there thinking, what's this going to be like? Everyone's a little bit wondering, is he, but he came in and he was pretty, and maybe he had cooled off, I'm sure, a little bit, but he came in and he was, he seemed to have it in perspective. He's like, hey, I lose. This is part of it. Sometimes you lose, et cetera. And, but I think Stanford really, really bit at him, and, maybe a couple other games too, but even the Houston loss last year, they'd end their season. Again, there was a cooling off period before he got to us, and he was pretty measured after that one too. So you don't always see it, but there's no question he has he does have a really strong competitive fire, just like almost all of them do.
I knew he was a really different guy. I knew he was a real cool customer when the TCU game, and we're sitting in press row, and Arizona's down 3. and Ben Mathurin gets the ball, and a lot of coaches would have started screaming for a timeout or yelling or whatever. He just looked at Ben Mathurin and he said, go. And Ben Mathurin pulled up for the three. That's when I really knew, because the season was totally on the line there. Ben Mathurin doesn't make that shot, Arizona's probably getting bounced in the second round. That's when I really knew that, man, this guy is really, that's just who he is right there, because that was about as dire a moment as you will have as a coach, and he didn't flinch. He just played his cards.
Yeah, I think he knew, I think that's it. I think he has a good feel for that, and letting guys go when they need to go and trusting them. There are times lately, especially, where he's called early timeouts when, he needed to reset something, which kind of went against what he was doing earlier in the year, where he would let him go through that. And I think with Mathurin, everybody knew he was special. And by the end of the year, what do you need to say to him? And especially maybe you don't even want to call a timeout if nothing else, to keep that, that momentum and that fresh. But, Mathurin was the kind of guy who just, in that situation was just like, give me the ball, get out of the way. I'm going to do it. And he did it. And I think Tommy knew that was, that was possibility. And he was like, I don't want to mess with this. Let's let this guy go. And
how do you got Arizona, UCLA coming up here in a couple of weeks. UCLA probably going to win the conference now, but watching UCLA Arizona up close, what did you take away? Because those are clearly the two best teams in the conference by a mile. What did you think of that matchup?
Wow. I just was, again, shocked at how, not shocked, but just, because I saw Arizona changing to be a little more adaptable, but just the way they won that was really something else. And just holding UCLA down the way they did, I think, I still think UCLA top to bottom is more talented. They're deeper, but Arizona has a really top shelf offense. Again, when both inside and out are hitting, then I don't even think UCLA can match when it's going. So it's just a really interesting matchup. And that game at UCLA, you hope, just as an observer, and I'm sure fans too, like, you hope it does come down to the conference being on the line for that game, but Arizona's going to need a little help for that to happen. But either way, it could be a tremendous game, because even if the conference isn't at stake, there's going to be seeding implications for the Pac-12 tournament and the NCAA tournament. So it'll be huge. All
right. Last two reads right here. Candlin. We're taking off, Bruce. That's how we got so many of these sponsors right now. We like this. And with Bruce Pascoe coming on, that never hurts. But Candlin, check it out. A lot of people don't have what they need in life. Kids down in Phoenix, Candlin.org has, they're there to help them, from resources to school, you name it, they've got it. Candlin.org, great thing to check out right there. Help out some of the people with some, that don't have all the basic necessities. And the new sponsor here, Roman. After Valentine's Day, this is the place to go. Check it out, GetRoman.com, or check out the show notes in the link in the description. Want to feel a little bit healthier about yourself, feel a little bit younger, all that, Roman has you covered right there. There's a reason that it's taken off and that so many people are utilizing it. So check it out, GetRoman.com, and the show notes and the link in the description. Now is a better time than ever. All right, Bruce, before we sign off here, just wanted to ask you a little bit, though, about, like, I've had a bunch of people ask me this over the years, and I felt you would be the better person to ask. If somebody wanted to get into covering, and again, newspaper is different now than it was but how did you get into just covering? Did you always want to be a journalist? Did you always want to write? Because I know how you got thrown into the UNLV job, but did you always want to do what you're doing?
I wasn't sure. I was a double major in journalism and economics, and I thought maybe I wanted to go into banking or something. And I actually interviewed with banks as a senior in college, and then I got some really attractive internships at newspapers, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try this.
Right.
On top of having written for a student paper. And really enjoyed it. And so I just stuck with it. And then I started in Las Vegas as an editor. I was a copy editor and page designer, and, covered a little baseball on the side. And then, 6 months into the job, our guy covering AAA baseball there left for Reno. And I took that job. And then a couple of years after that, the guy who's covering UNLV left to go to Denver, and that job was open, and nobody else on the staff wanted it, because even though they were the number one team in the country most of the time in that era, there was just so many so many other things to cover with that sport. So it wasn't
a
really
a lot of court cases,
yeah, a lot
off the court cases.
I spent as much time in the courtroom and the police calling police and this and that. Just, it seemed like, anyway, that wasn't the case, of course, but there was a lot of other stuff, which I thought was good. I wanted to do it because I thought, I'm learning this business, and it gives you a really good experience to do all that kind of stuff, which I think has helped me even lately, with all this FBI stuff the last few years. I mean, like, covering hard news is not a big deal. It's actually, energizing to get to do that on top of covering games and writing features or whatever, so yeah, that's why I've been in it so long. There's always a cool mix of things to do when you cover a beat like this, where you have a lot of news and you get to know people and write stories about their lives, and then cover the games and the athletic part of it. It's just there's a whole mix. Keeps making it interesting.
All right, Bruce, you're going to be hanging out with us though up in Phoenix though for the EYBL in April, correct?
It's funny you say that. I was just literally looking at the calendar today, trying to figure out when that is. I don't know. I saw something in Queen Creek, I guess, like in late April. I don't even know if that's it or what.
I'll get it. I'll get it to you. I was just looking at this the other day.
But I do plan to. I hope to. I hope I will come if there are prospects that Arizona is looking at that we think they're looking at or whatever. But we all know that Tommy Lloyd's been pretty selective, recruiting. I'm not sure who's going to be there, so we'll see. Right. But yeah, I plan to.
All right, Bruce, as always, you're the man, dude. And again, one of the best dudes in the entire industry. Bruce, really appreciate you, my guy, and we will talk to you soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right. That's Bruce Pascoe. I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.